This isn't you. You weren't born this way, numb, restless, hesitant. You didn't arrive in this world with fear in your veins or apathy in your chest. And you won't die this way either, not unless you let it happen. And if you do, you won't even care. Because by then it'll be too late. But right now you still have time, you're still here, you're still breathing. And that quiet, aching voice inside of you, that's the part of you that remembers. It remembers who you were before the fear, before the doubt, before the long nights when your heart stopped believing in something better. That voice, it's still alive. And though it barely whispers now, it hasn't stopped calling you back to yourself. It says you were made for more. You've heard it before, haven't you? At night, in moments of silence, in the pause between distractions. It's that voice that interrupts the scroll, the binge-watching, the excuses. The one that keeps asking, what if this isn't all there is? What if you could become something more? Most people ignore it. They keep covering it up with noise, and maybe you have too, but here's something you need to know. No one is coming to save you, not your parents, not your friends, not some future version of you who magically wakes up one day motivated and perfect. No, there's only one person who can change your life, and that's the person staring back at you in the mirror. This is not you against the world. It never was. This is you versus you. That's the battle. That's the truth. People think success is about motivation, but motivation is fragile. It's fleeting. Some days it shows up and you feel invincible. But most days it doesn't. Most days your body begs you to stay comfortable. Your mind whispers, just one day off. It gives you excuses that sound so reasonable. You didn't sleep enough. You're stressed. You deserve a break. And maybe all of that is true. But none of it will get you where you want to go. That's where discipline comes in. Not the loud, rigid kind that shouts at you to hustle harder. No, the quiet kind. The kind that shows up in the silence when no one is watching. The kind that pulls you out of bed when everything in you wants to hide. Discipline is doing what you hate like you love it. It's lacing up your shoes when your muscles ache. It's writing the page when the words won't come. It's getting up again and again, even when yesterday gave you nothing in return. It's easy to be average today. Most people give up at the first sign of discomfort. Most people want results, not repetition. They want the applause, not the process. But you're not most people, are you? You've already felt it, the weight of being stuck. The quiet pain of knowing you're capable of more, but not doing anything about it. That's the worst kind of pain, not the pain of failure, the pain of never even trying. There was a girl named Elara, not the smartest, not the strongest, just someone with a whisper in her heart that wouldn't go away. She didn't wait for confidence. She didn't wait for the world to tell her she was ready. She simply started, scared, unsure, tired. She was tired of watching others grow while she stayed still, tired of pretending she didn't care, tired of saying, maybe next year, maybe next time, maybe later. So one day, without warning, she got up. She didn't feel ready, but she stood anyway. And she decided that no matter how long it took, she would become someone she was proud of. It wasn't dramatic. No one noticed. There was no spotlight, no celebration, just a quiet moment, one decision, one step, and then another, and another, until one day she realized she hadn't stopped. She'd built a life on the small, invisible moments that no one clapped for. That's the real transformation. That's how it happens, not in grand gestures, but in the everyday choice to believe in yourself, even when no one else does. There's something you need to understand. The most important applause you'll ever hear is the one that comes from within. Before the world ever sees your light, you have to be the one who protects it, who fuels it, who refuses to let it burn out no matter how dark the room gets. And yes, it's lonely. There will be nights where you feel like the only one clapping, a slow, awkward, echoing applause that no one joins, but that's okay. Because one day someone will ask how you did it, and you'll remember this moment. You'll remember when it was just you trying, breaking, healing. You'll remember the silence. And you'll smile knowing that's where the story really began. The journey is long. The work is hard, but you're not behind, you're not late. You're just getting started, and that whisper, it's still here, still waiting, still hoping you'll listen. You versus you every day, every choice, every breath. They don't tell you this part. They don't tell you about the silence, the long stretches of time where no one claps, no one sees, no one understands. You're working, you're growing, you're changing, but the world stays quiet. And it's in that silence between two heartbeats that most people give up. Elara felt it too. After all the nights she stayed in, the birthdays she missed, the comfort she gave up, nothing had changed. She was still invisible, still doubting, still stuck somewhere between not being who she was and not yet becoming who she wanted to be. It's a strange place to live, not broken enough to fall apart, not strong enough to break through. That's the part where people say, it's not working, and walk away, but she didn't, because she started to understand something. The path of the exceptional is always lonely, not because you're wrong, but because you're different. She stopped waiting for people to understand. She stopped needing their approval. She started choosing her own quiet applause. Most people think success is supposed to feel exciting, but sometimes it feels like silence. Sometimes it feels like waking up alone at 5 a.m. to go work on something no one asked you to do. Sometimes it feels like discipline with no reward, effort with no proof, hope with no evidence. But those are the moments that change you. Those are the moments that stretch your soul, and no one sees it until one day they do. That's when they start to ask, how did you do it? And you'll want to laugh, because they didn't see you standing in the rain. They didn't see you talking to yourself in mirrors, didn't see you deleting your distractions, didn't hear the arguments you had in your head just to get yourself out of bed. They didn't see you sitting in libraries alone while your friends were out dancing. Didn't notice how many times you said no to parties, no to comfort, no to fitting in. Because you were saying yes to something bigger. They just see the outcome, not the cost. Elara was never chasing fame. She was chasing freedom from herself, because no external success could ever feel satisfying if she was still shackled by her own excuses. She had to learn that sometimes the real work is letting go of who you were supposed to be, so you can finally become who you are. The pain didn't go away, but she stopped fearing it. The fear of discomfort was replaced by something deeper, the fear of wasting her life. And when that became stronger than her fear of failure, everything shifted. There's a day that comes to all of us, a moment when average no longer feels acceptable, when being comfortable makes you feel sick, when mediocrity stings more than pain ever could. That day came for her quietly, not through tragedy, but through clarity. She looked around at people who had less talent, less vision, less soul. But they had something she hadn't fully embraced. Commitment. She had been waiting for permission to go all in. But it was never going to come, because the truth is, the world only claps for those who don't need the clapping anymore. So she clapped for herself and kept walking. Even when it hurt, even when it felt like nothing was changing, because she finally understood. This isn't about applause. This isn't about approval. This is about becoming someone she could be proud of. Even in the dark, you're not falling behind. You're learning to walk alone. You're not invisible. You're just still in the part of the story where the hero is building strength in silence. Don't mistake the silence for failure. Don't confuse quiet with weakness. Some of the loudest breakthroughs happen in complete stillness. And when it hurts, when it feels like no one sees you, no one gets you, no one is coming to walk this road with you, that's when you say to yourself, it's okay. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing this for the future me. And when you do that, you start to hear something in the silence, Not applause, not praise, but respect. The kind of respect that grows when you realize you are stronger than you ever thought you were. It was never you versus them. It was always you versus you, and now you're finally beginning to win. There's always a moment, not loud, not announced, but you'll feel it. It sneaks in during the stillness. A choice, a split second that whispers, are you ready to become who you were meant to be? That moment came for Elara on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day no one would remember. She sat alone in a quiet cafe, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry, but something inside her felt. Done pretending she was okay living small. Done minimizing her dreams so they'd be easier for other people to accept. Done putting her life on pause. Until someone gave her permission to press play. She had a decision to make, and no one could make it for her. On one side of that decision was everything she knew: safety, familiarity, the comfort of almost. On the other side was risk, uncertainty, and a version of herself she wasn't sure she could live up to. But what scared her most was not the chance that she might fail. What terrified her was the idea that she might never even try. And so, with no audience, no confetti, no voiceover telling her what to do next, she chose herself. Not the polished version, not the perfect one, just herself. The part of her that had been buried beneath the weight of pleasing others, the part that still believed she could fly, even after years of crawling. That's the choice that changes everything. Not success, not fame, not making it. Choosing not to quit when you have every reason to. She walked out of that cafe into a world that looked the same. But something inside her was different, not louder, but clearer. The truth was she had already lost so much time trying to fit in, trying to be likable, trying to explain herself to people who were never meant to understand her. But the people who are meant for you, you don't need to convince them. They see you without the performance. She was tired of performing, so she stopped. And the moment she stopped, she started living. People began to notice. Not because she changed her clothes or her smile, but because she carried herself with something new. Conviction. She wasn't louder. She wasn't trying to be impressive. She had simply made peace with her path, and when that happens, you stop chasing energy that doesn't return. You stop begging for doors that were never meant to open. You stop proving, and you start becoming. But it doesn't mean the road gets easier. In fact, in many ways, it gets harder, because now there's no more hiding. You've chosen growth, and growth is brutal. It asks you to look at the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It asks for sacrifice, for honesty, for surrender. And the most painful truth? Sometimes the people you love the most can't come with you. They don't want the new version of you. They want the version who stayed quiet, who played small, who didn't make them feel insecure about their own choices. That's the cost, and you have to be willing to pay it. Elara had to let go of friendships that once felt like home. She had to accept that not everyone would clap for her transformation. Some would criticize it, some would mock it, some would walk away. But for the first time in her life, she didn't beg them to stay because she wasn't living for applause anymore. She was living for alignment. She wasn't choosing the easy road. She was choosing the right one. And right doesn't always feel good. It feels lonely. It feels terrifying. It feels like walking barefoot through glass, unsure if there's an end. But that's where most people turn around, and that's why most people never change. They stand at the edge of transformation, and they say, not yet. I'm not ready. I'm scared. But readiness is a myth. You don't become ready, you decide. That's what Elara did. She decided to stop betraying herself. Every time things got uncomfortable, she decided that her future mattered. More than other people's opinions. She decided to become the kind of woman her younger self would have admired, not for being perfect, but for being real. And in that decision, everything changed, not because life suddenly became easier, but because she became stronger. The woman who once questioned everything now stood with trembling hands and a steady heart, still scared, still uncertain, but rooted in who she was, what she wanted, and what she was no longer willing to tolerate. That's how you begin again, not with certainty, but with courage. Courage to walk away from comfort. Courage to let people misunderstand you. Courage to grow into someone who no longer fits the life you once built. This was never about becoming someone else. It was always about coming home to yourself. And now, Elara was on her way. There's a day that no one warns you about, a day you don't put on the calendar, a day that arrives without knocking. It doesn't start with an explosion, it starts with a stillness. You wake up, and something feels different, not in the world. In you, it's as if your body is here, but your soul is somewhere else, looking backward, weighing things that haven't happened, but could have. That was the day Elara met regret. It didn't show up screaming, it whispered. It whispered in the sound of a missed phone call. A memory that surfaced too late. A what if that wouldn't let go. She looked in the mirror that morning and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because she had failed, but because she hadn't allowed herself to truly begin. She had accomplished things, yes. She had grown, yes, but in her heart. She knew she'd been playing it safe. She hadn't let herself fully go there, to the edge of everything she could become. Why? Because she was afraid of pain, of judgment, of outgrowing the people she once loved, of being great and still being alone. And yet there she was. Not alone because she became too much, but because she never became enough of herself. Regret doesn't come from failure. It comes from never knowing what might have happened. If you had just tried one more time, if you had said what you really felt, if you had pushed a little harder, when no one was watching. That morning, Elara couldn't stop thinking about an old friend, someone she had once dreamed big with. They used to stay up at night, planning how they'd change the world. But one day that friend had stopped dreaming, and little by little, so had Elara. She stopped taking risks, stopped asking questions, stopped looking up. She became efficient, productive, impressive even, but not alive, and now here she was, with more accomplishments than ever, but a hollow echo inside her chest. It was a feeling she couldn't explain to anyone, because on the outside everything looked fine, but on the inside, there was this ache, a quiet voice asking, "Is this really all you were meant for?" That voice didn't accuse her, it didn't shame her, it simply invited her back. Back to that place before the fear, before the performing, before the pressure to be liked, respected, accepted. Back to the rawest version of herself. The girl who used to run barefoot in fields, who made up stories under the stars, who believed she could move mountains with nothing but her words. Elara sat with that memory and wept because somewhere along the way, she had traded wonder for safety, dreams for duty, life for performance, and for what? Applause that never really satisfied. Validation that disappeared the moment she looked away. That day, she didn't go to work. She didn't open her laptop. She didn't reply to messages. She walked. Nowhere in particular, just walked. And as she walked, she thought about the people who never got the chance to choose. The ones who died young, who never got the time she was wasting. And the question came again, louder now. If not now, when? There are only so many mornings you get to wake up with a body that still moves. Only so many chances to say what you mean. Only so many seasons left to love fully, live deeply, become bravely. Elara reached a park bench and sat down, not because she was tired, but because she needed to choose, keep living on the edge of herself, or jump, She thought about the years she had left, and what they would cost if she stayed on the path of almost. And then she remembered something her mentor once told her. The life you want is on the other side of a few hard conversations. One of those conversations was with herself, right now. And this time, she didn't avoid it. She looked herself in the heart and said, I will not be the reason I live a small life. And in that moment, regret lost. When the shift happens, it doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like silence, the kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore, the kind that feels like peace. Elara didn't wake up the next day glowing. She didn't suddenly feel fearless or wildly confident. But something in her had changed. She no longer needed the world to clap because she was done performing. Now she moved differently, not because she had all the answers, but because she had stopped asking the wrong questions. She no longer wondered, what will they think? She started asking, what do I think? What do I need? What do I want to build before I leave this earth? That shift changed everything. She stopped trying to prove she was worthy of space and started taking up space by simply being herself. Not louder, just more rooted, more true. The people who once doubted her began to notice, not because she demanded their attention, but because she no longer needed it. There's something magnetic about someone who's finally come home to themselves. You can feel it in the way they walk, the way they speak, the way they listen. Elara became one of those people, not a success story. A becoming story. She didn't chase stages. She created sacred rooms. Rooms where people could come and lay down their shame. Rooms where ambition didn't mean emptiness. Where growth didn't mean burnout. Where softness was power, not weakness. She didn't rise by stepping over others. She rose by reaching into the dark and pulling others into the light. That became her legacy, not fame, not recognition, but permission. Permission for others to dream again, to try again, to believe they were still allowed to want more. People began asking, how did you do it? And she always smiled, not with pride, but with the gentleness of someone who knew the cost. She would say, I stopped waiting to become someone else. I just became me, the me I was too scared to let out before. She began mentoring others, quietly, patiently, not giving them steps or hacks, but giving them presence. Because sometimes what we need most isn't more advice. It's someone sitting beside us saying, I've been where you are, and you can come through this. She knew now the biggest breakthrough wasn't building a perfect life. It was building one she didn't need to escape from. She no longer feared failure, because she had met something scarier, a version of herself who had never even tried, and she had walked away from her. Now she was choosing, every day, every hour, to show up, to love, to forgive, to stretch, to begin again, not because it was easy, but because it was right. This was no longer a story of struggle. It had become a story of surrender, of resilience, of rebirth. There is a moment in every becoming story when you realize you are no longer becoming, you have arrived, not in the world's eyes, but in your own. Elara reached that moment, and when she did, she looked around. There was no spotlight, no trophy, just light filtering through her window, a cup of tea in her hand, peace in her chest. That was the win. Because at the end of it all, you don't want to look back and say, I could have been something. You want to look back and whisper, I became it, quietly, fully, deeply me. And maybe someone hears your story. Maybe they're sitting in the dark, where you once were, and maybe they'll whisper back, if she could, maybe I can too. Because in the end, it was never about being the best. It was always about being brave enough to be you.